And you guys are live.
Thanks. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to What's the Tea with the New Building Beyond Violence and Abuse. My name is Angie. I am a community educator here, and we have it's like a family friend that's joining us today. So today we have Liz, and we're going to be talking about some really awesome things today that I don't think people really think about when we're talking about healing and trauma. So this is going to be really nice. But before we get to know Liz, I do want to start off by telling everybody to please share this video to your Facebook page, share with your friends and family, like the page if you have any questions, any comments, or you just want to say something nice, feel free to write in the comments. I also do want to remind you all that starting next year, we will be going to one episode a month. Okay, so again, we will be keeping you all updated as that gets closer. But it is the week of Christmas, so this is how's it going for you? Are you excited? Are you like in the Christmas spirit, Liz?
I have been very much working this year to embrace the seasons and the holidays as they come and in ways that I know are fulfilling. So I will say that, yes, I am working on that enthusiasm. Doesn't always come naturally, but I've had an opportunity to go to see the Nutcracker play, to go to the Morton Arboretum this year, and just to spend some, time with my husband, really embracing really immersing ourselves in decorating the tree, really immersing ourselves in watching some of the holiday movies. And even though we can't do big things all the time,
right,
some little moments that allow us to be with each other and really try to be, we'll talk about mindfulness today, but to be mindful of what we're doing and bringing awareness to it.
No, I can definitely understand that. Really trying to get yourself in the spirit. I think this year has been hectic for a lot of people as well. So definitely trying to bring some of that holiday cheer, to help brighten up our spirits is really important too. So Liz, tell me about yourself. Welcome to What's the Tea. Thank you so much for being here with us. So if you can start off and just tell me more about yourself and your career at Serendipity Yoga.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for having me here today. It is truly an honor to work with Anu. I always seek out opportunities to collaborate with all of you because I really believe that what the services that you offer our community and the South Suburbs are critical and so valuable. So thank you for having me. My name is Liz, and I do own Serendipity Yoga and Wellness. It's situated right here in downtown Homewood. We opened up in our new location in the middle of July, but I have been teaching yoga in Homewood for the last decade. So I am not a stranger to our town or our village. Some of the services that I feel so fortunate to offer are working with teaching group classes for yoga. We'll dive into a little bit about what that entails as we go through our discussion today. I work with clients one-on-one, kids and adults, to facilitate mindfulness practices with children specifically. I feel so fortunate that I get to work with them individually to fuse academics with mindfulness practices. I was a teacher in Homewood and in the Homewood schools for also 10 years, but I've been out of that for a few years now, and love still getting to see those moments where children have the information click in their head and that magic light bulb clicks on, especially when it relates to self-management and self-regulation, executive functioning, figuring out how to organize information in ways that feels magical when it finally all settles in. So yes, background in teaching, own a yoga studio, work with kids and adults one-on-one, and teach group yoga classes. I still get to collaborate with our schools pretty regularly in some very unique ways that I could not have even pictured 5 years ago, but I love being able to interact with our school districts as well as with businesses like Anu and other local businesses around town. Yoga seems to somehow just fit in almost every facet of daily living when we take our definition and broaden it out beyond just thinking about movement.
Mm. Yeah, you have done a lot in the community. Definitely, you have been in the career field and is in a career field that have touched a lot of hearts and a lot of minds and a lot of bodies, and really left imprints on individuals' hearts. It's so interesting because your background in yoga, I'm sure you have really been able to connect with kids on another level with your teaching experience as well. So could you let me know, well, let the audience know, how did you get into the career field of mindfulness and yoga? What changed your career path?
Okay, so I always feel flip telling this story, but I will be, because I think it makes yoga feel even more approachable. So I tell this story because yoga is very approachable. One of my dear friends and colleagues and I sought out yoga as a way to initially exercise without sweating. We're like, how can we move and not sweat? Now I will tell you a couple things we learned right away. One, you will sweat. That was a fallacy that we took. The other thing that I took away is that it was the first form of physical movement that I wanted to return to. And it took me several years to figure out why that was, why I felt so good when I was done and felt almost like I was called to go back. And it was because I realized later that it's not, the movement is a piece of it, but it was what was happening in my mind and really the healing that was happening for me emotionally and energetically as a result of being on my mat and connecting with my body, that was what pulled me back. And so I talk to students and clients that I work with a lot about that it's very natural to come in and just move. And that is a beautiful entry point to get acquainted with your body, to release, energy in that way, and to get stronger physically, to get flexible physically, to find balance physically. But it's not uncommon for yoga to resonate on a deeper level with a lot of people, to transform what's happening in our brains and in our emotional fields and in our hearts.
I love that. That's so hilarious because, you know, you went into it thinking like, okay, I'm gonna be active without sweating, and you're like, haha, never mind. And then look at you now. And it's so funny
all like really just kind of took off from there, because that same friends, kind of in a offhand conversation was like, you should become a yoga teacher. And my response was, okay. And I signed up next week. So again, it was very, very natural and offhand at times. But what happened, as soon as I started in that teacher training, I really started to understand the science behind what was transpiring within me and what happens with so many other people. And as soon as I was in that training and started to go through all of this, I didn't even realize what was happening until my principal at the time pulled me in her office one day, and it was like, and she asked, what is going on with you? And in that moment, it's like, what did I do? Oh my gosh,
I know you're looking like, huh?
Even as a teacher, you still have that fear of going to the principal.
Oh yeah.
So, and I asked her to elaborate. Tell me more. Like, what is this regarding? And she's like, you just seem so much calmer and level-headed in how you're approaching your class, how you move through the hallways, you're quieter. What's going on? And it hit me at that moment that this practice, going to training every week, taking yoga classes several times a week was really starting to alter my energy and how I interacted with other people, and not only with them, but how I felt with myself. And I will tell you, if you can't tell, I have a lot of energy, very active person. And I started to notice that I got easier to sit still, and I got easier to be quiet, and it got easier to be with my own thinking, because I know for myself and for a lot of other people, there's this very scary M word that's attached to yoga called meditation. And that becomes very terrifying. You want me to sit for how long and do nothing and just be with the things that come up in my head? And that is scary for several different reasons, and for different people in different ways. But for me, that slowly started to become something that was an easier task to accomplish. And I hadn't realized it until she said that. So to your original question, how did this become what I did? Well, I was teaching. I left the classroom for a few years and was working in a semi-administrative role and moving among schools, and just realizing that while I still loved working with kids, I wasn't feeling the same spark and the same passion for my classroom and for the job as I had before. And so one day I sat with my husband, and he's like, "What's going on? You just seem sad." And I was "I'm just not feeling the love right now." And we talked, and it was very simple. He made it so simple. He just said, "Well, then if you don't love it, don't do it." And so that was a Friday. And on Monday, I submitted my resignation letter, and I completed the year. That was, I think, and I finished the year out, but we decided to give it a go. Could I make my tutoring model and all of my yoga classes become a full-time career? And oh my goodness, has it blossomed from there. And I've been able to, so fortunate to be supported in our community and us surrounding areas, that I've been able to flourish. And even through COVID, it hasn't been easy, but there are a lot of wonderful things happening.
Well, that's amazing. I honestly think your story right there can touch a lot of people who feel like they're between that rock and a hard place of not knowing what to do, or I know that I have a passion, but should I do it? So that leap of faith that you had, and that class blossomed, it kind of reborn you into someone else that found a whole new passion for something. So that's really amazing. And speaking of this and meditation and just being in the moment of your feelings and your thoughts, could you tell us a little bit about the connection between yoga and trauma? Because I could say from my career field, from your career field, we're dealing with individuals who may come from trauma, who very well come from trauma. So how does these two intersect?
Absolutely. So I want to start with a disclaimer that trauma, as I think I know and that your clients know, my clients know, and are learning, trauma comes in all different packages and comes in all different shapes and sizes, and is not a one size fits all. And so the most important thing to remember as we talk about all of this is that the way we approach yoga and the way that we approach individuals is going to be very personalized, and it should be extremely personalized. And we need to take into account all of our history that we bring in, because yoga is not, as we've already talked about, it doesn't just touch the body. It touches the emotional level of us. It touches our brains. It touches all of the levels of our being. And so I think here, I'm just going to take a moment to break that down a bit and talk about the 5 different layers of each person. We have our physical body. You can see this in our camera right now. We then, in yoga, we talk about having the layer of our being that's our breath body. And so we can feel ourselves breathe in and out. And that's independent of this physical body, because this physical body is still here, even if the breath body isn't. So we have to take those 2 things into account. And how we breathe can shift how we feel in our body. And so they're intimately connected. We then have our brains, our minds, and how they think and how we experience things. We have our energetic body, if you will, and you can think of that really simply, like, I feel low energy today. I'm just,
Yeah.
Some days I'm high energy and I can't stop and I need to keep going. And then we have our emotional bodies, and this is what we're feeling. And that's separate than our brain, because I can feel one way in my heart and be thinking very differently. I knew it was time to leave my job in my heart, but my brain did okay, what are you going to do for insurance? How are you going to pay your bill? So there can be a disconnect here, and a disconnect isn't a bad thing. It's just they're 2 different parts of us. And so not every part is always the same or incongruent. So as I go through talking a little bit more about trauma, just bear in mind where I'm at is thinking about all of the different levels of each person's being. So yoga is great for the body, the physical being. A lot of us walk around very disconnected from our own bodies, and sometimes that's very protective. And so when people start moving their bodies, that can be super vulnerable and terrifying, can also be really liberating. And so exploring little movements can have a really big impact. And for some people, it's not yoga, it's getting out there and running. And I will tell you, I've gone through phases in my life of processing trauma where I just need to get out there and like pound some pavement and like sob hysterically as I run. That's a beautiful release for me. For some people, that release is going to come from weightlifting. And so physical yoga isn't a one size fits all, but it's a beautiful way to start to move mindfully, thinking about our moving, to get you acquainted with your own physical body and to put you back into it. And so when somebody specifically has come from a background, say, of domestic abuse, and may have had control of their bodies stripped from them, this can be a really powerful tool to regain your ability to be in yourself and to take back some of that power for yourself. On a breath level, when we live in trauma and when we've had trauma, and again, trauma is all packages, lowercase t, capital T, and everything in between. Our breath changes. And so many of us walk around shallow breathing. Even if we're just feeling stressed, think about like when you're like, very simple. Think about all of the things we still have to do before Christmas. Like that gets me like
the anxiety. Yeah.
Right. It's the anxiety, and the anxiety response, the panic response is short, shallow breaths. Stay alive. That's what's happening. Just stay alive. Breathe. When we learn how to control our breath, we can create more variability in our heart rate, just meaning that your resting heart rate is lower, and that when you exercise, you get your heart rate, you can control it and make it higher. So there's more variability or difference between your resting heart rate and your higher heart rate, your exercising heart rate. And so with greater variability in your heart rate, deeper breathing, you can really start to control how you want to feel. And there are times we need to protect ourselves. There are times we need these short, shallow breaths. We need to stay alive. But more often than not, especially in the recovery from trauma, when we're starting this healing process, we need to learn how to be safe again. We need to retrain ourselves and relearn, really, not even train, but relearn how to be safe. And for some of us, it's not even relearning, it's learning for the first time, because this may be a lifelong trauma that's been occurring, and or a series of such. And so yoga has that power to help us learn to breathe, which teaches our bodies how to be calm. And there is that body and that brain connection then, because we're transforming ourselves neurologically at that point. We're teaching the nervous system by deeply breathing. We are safe. We are okay. We're grounded. I'm in my body. I'm going to make it into the next moment. And that can serve us from panic attacks to anxiety, into the healing from domestic abuse. In the work that I do with kids, the reality of like taking tests can be so anxiety invoking. The reality of conflict on the playground can throw us into distress. We have little kids, right? 1 and 2 year olds. That temper tantrum moment where it just feels like the world is ending for the child and the parents, right?
Yes.
We both benefit from long, deep breaths at that point. It's like,
yeah.
okay, mom's world's not over. Neither is our toddler's world. We will all be okay. So that breath can be extremely powerful in reset. And then with the emotions, with our energy level, movement changes that. Play changes that. And yoga often can become very playful, especially when we talk about working with kids. Most of our yoga for grownups is so boring compared to yoga for kids. Let's just talk about that. No, yoga for adults is fabulous, but yoga for children looks nothing like an adult class. Yoga for kids is about playing. They need to learn their bodies in a different way. And our brains need 6 things to grow and function. We need food, we need water, we need to be able to take deep breaths and oxygenate ourselves. We need to move, we need to play, we need to rest. And yoga allows us to do 4 of those 6 things that our brains need to learn, grow, and thrive. And so never underestimate the power of play in your day-to-day life as a child or as an adult. It can really just reset our whole entire nervous system.
Wow, this is really interesting, especially hearing you break down each layer of ourselves that maybe we didn't even think about. Sometimes when you hear people say yoga, you're just like, okay, you do the stretching and stuff, okay, but it's deeper, and it's really connecting to your body. And I think it really bring awareness that a lot of us don't really know our body or ourselves. So that's really interesting. So I know we're, being advocates, maybe if you're a counselor or things of that nature, you may have a client for months at a time or, years at a time. Typically, how long do you have your clients? Does it vary, or because I know that you spoke about the journey being, in depth and may take a while, especially if you're coming from a background of trauma and depending on how long that has been present in your life. So how long would you see your clients?
Oh my goodness. So I've been teaching yoga for 10 years, and some of my clients were also my classmates, where when I was taking yoga, we were on mats side by side with one another. So it really is a community that we're building. So some people I'll see a couple of times, and that is where they decide that their journey with you
Right.
has moved on. But I will tell you, I have some of the children that I work with who started with me in second or third grade. So when they were 7 or 8 years old, and I'm probably going to get teary here, but they are seniors in high school this year. And I've moved more than a few kiddos into college. And so these are lasting relationships that we are talking about, which is part of what I love so much, because you you can really build relationships with people, especially children, because children, if they're lucky, they have a parent or a guardian who loves them that they live with at home.
Yeah.
They have teachers, and parents have different roles than teachers have, and teachers have different roles than parents have.
Yeah.
And sometimes, we can go back to always, it takes a village, right? And so I get to become a part of the village with a lot of the kids that I work with, and become their trusted adult that isn't grading them, and that isn't making them make their bed and do the laundry and all of those other things.
Yeah.
And so to have a trusted adult that just gets, one of the kids has started calling me their tutor friend. I'm like, it's like, because who are you really? I don't know. I guess like more than a tutor, but not, so it becomes that relationship. Client, as far as adults, clients go, these can be relationships that last us years and decades. And even within like group classes, everybody looks after each other. And really, when we have new students come in, that's one of the scariest things, to be a new yoga student who's never done yoga before. It's something, it's like going to the gym, but even scarier, because you have like really these preconceived notions of what it's going to be. And you're like, I have to take my shoes off in this place. I'm like, quiet. I don't know. But such an amazing community of men, women, teenagers, adults, little children that are just like, come in, hi, how are you? Like, be a part of our community. We're welcoming you. And so during COVID, we weren't together, but everybody was looking after one another. And how's so and so doing? Here's a card, and I got the honor of being the intermediary of like running cards to people and dropping things off, because they're thinking about each other. And so more than even all of the other stuff we talked about, some of us are just trying to find our place. And so if we have a person or a group of people that can hold us up, there's such a power in that as well.
Yeah. It's just so interesting when I hear you talk about, just being that trusted adult and building these relationships, not only with adults, but, adolescents as well, the teenagers, the children. And so part of our department, we give presentations. We deal with pre-K all the way up to adults, depending on who needs the presentations. And so for our pre-K through second grade classes, we talk about hands are not for hitting. And we talk about feelings and how it's okay to cry, how it's okay to be mad and sad, but what do you do if you're feeling all of the things? But we also do breathing exercises with them on how to calm down. So it's so interesting just hearing you speak about the background of the positivity and, how yoga and the breathing and mindfulness can really have an impact on these students as well. So what is the youngest child you have worked with?
All right. Well, let's talk about, we teach prenatal yoga. So we start.
Really?
We do. That is one of my other things that I love to do, is I love to our community of expectant mothers and fathers. So starting in the womb, we can really start to cultivate a loving and nurturing environment for these little ones. Now, outside of that, we've done mom and baby yoga. And so we can get moms on the mats, and I've collaborated with other amazing community resources to provide infant massage, not my background, but not what I do, but we've been able to collaborate in our regular little group classes. As soon as the kids can walk, we can get them on their mat. And that requires a little extra assistance from a caregiver, but we get the caregivers down on the ground, the kiddos on the ground, we sing, we play. It will never, I can't imagine ever having the magic wear off of watching these kids be 1.5, 2 years old, 3 years old, being little, like, doing what they do, which is amazing. They run around, they explore the world. They don't want to stay on their mat. They want to touch everything. And they don't want to.
That's what I'm thinking of. I'm like, how would my son be in these classes?
Well, it's always so funny because parents are always mortified. I'm like, it's okay if your kid gets up and runs around. It's okay if they're not quiet. And I watch every caregiver like, no, like the first time is
here.
anxiety inducing for the adult. And I'm like, it's really okay. Like, we're in a room. They can't, it's an empty room too. It's gonna be okay. But once the kids learn the routine, the magic happens in the last few minutes of class where it never fails. Every child will lay down either alone or with their caregiver. We set a limit. We listen to one song. It's the same song every time. So once they know how long it is, it's expected, right? Like, our brains love knowing what's coming. They really do. Yeah, it's a beautiful healing tool, isn't it? You know what to expect.
Right.
So same song every time. And they will lay down. And it's still and silent. And it is the most magical thing in the entire world. And I can't explain, like, I have good classroom management skills. They're not that good. It is something that those little brains and those little bodies crave. And so do our bigger bodies, adolescent bodies, adult bodies. We all crave stillness and quiet without going to sleep. But we don't give it to ourselves. We are an amazing species of distraction. I'm going to relax with Netflix right now. I'm going to relax with my video games. I'm going to let myself relax by going to sleep. And really what we need is rest without the distraction and rest without exhaustion. And so as soon as space is made, it's such a magical and powerful thing. And for adults too, if we can let our bodies find a spot that feels comfortable for us, and that's something sidebar, but with trauma, it's not always comfortable to, like, traditionally we would lay on our backs and like open our whole bodies up. That's not comfortable if you don't feel safe, right? So really find, and kids are so good at owning that. When I tell them to lay down and get comfy, they take all sorts of shapes. Grown-ups are more like, I have to do what she said to do because that's what she said to say, right? So we can learn from kids quite a bit. But when the kids really find a space where they feel comfortable and where they feel safe, and sometimes they're like under a blanket with like 5 pillows around them and curled up in like a little ball, they're safe. They're not going anywhere. And they will just lay there, and they're 2, so it's probably going to be like 3 minutes, but 3 minutes of 2-year-olds laying down and not moving, it's magic. Adults, same thing. When an adult has the permission to actually and feels like they can find a safe position to rest, when the rest comes, it's so powerful and so empowering, because you've created your own space of safety. You've done that for yourself. And I work a lot with the kids on that too, that they are powerful. They have a lot of control. They can't control everything. None of us can.
I'm definitely sitting here thinking like, I'm going to try these breathing exercises with my son. Next time he feels like the world is falling on him, I'm just going to be like, let's breathe and see what he does.
Tell you, with that, this brings up a good segue. Practice it before the world is falling, because just think as an adult.
That's very true.
Like, for example, when I'm having a moment, and yes, yoga teachers have moments. We have a lot of moments. But when my husband looks at me in the middle of a moment and is like, just take a deep breath. I'm like, you want to know what you can do with that deep breath, my lovely husband?
Right? No, this is not the time.
But at the same time, I know, and when I'm ready to do it, it's a tool that I will do. But I also have to have permission to be angry, much like you're teaching the kids in your program, right? Like, it's okay to have these feelings. It's okay for me to cry because I feel frustrated as an adult. And it is okay for me to, using kind words, to express my anger with a loud voice in a way that's constructive, not destructive, right? But I'm allowed to have all of my feels as an adult. And then I go to my toolbox when I'm ready and pull those tools out. So what I will say, my advice, should you choose to take, is to practice all of these things before the world is ending, and as often as you possibly can, so that it becomes his little handy toolbox. Where when the meltdown is either before the meltdown comes, because as mom, you know when it's coming. Before it comes, or at the dissipation, then we go into our toolbox and we pull out those things. And it's the same thing for adults. There are moments where we just need to be in those big emotions and in those big places. And we need to be constructive with it, always, but we can feel it and then go to the tools later.
Yes, I love that. Yeah. See, I'm learning stuff on here. See, this is why you all should watch tea, because we have individuals like Liz on here that's spilling the tea. But yes, and we're sitting here, and I know we talked about trauma in yoga, so I can only imagine the positive aspects and the healing that you can get as it relates to mental health as well. And I can only imagine during the pandemic alone, how much yoga and meditation and mindfulness and just you in general in your practices have probably saved a lot of people during this pandemic alone, because there were a lot of feelings, a lot of scary thoughts. So, we sat in the house, there was nothing else to do but think, and dealing with anxiety and things of that nature. So I can only imagine how these tools, how they had to pull them out their toolbox when it was needed a lot of times during this crazy 2 years we've been dealing with.
Absolutely. And all that we can do as teachers and my teaching community at Serendipity Yoga and all of the amazing studios in our area, all we can do is act as guides. We can sit here and share. And what's beautiful is that transition where you just watch the ownership start to come in. There's just nothing like that. Like, I have a young person who practices with an adult caregiver in a group class. And a couple of weeks ago, this young person was laying down, relaxing at the end of class, and all of a sudden just put their hands like this in front of their chest while they were laying down. And this was something that I had taught maybe 5 or 6 weeks earlier and had explained what this actually meant, which, side note, it's a hand position for personal empowerment, connecting the fingertips like this. You could almost think of it like as your villain hand, like.
Right. I know, I was thinking that.
But this is a hand position, or we call a mudra in yoga, for personal empowerment and to feel like you are in control of your circumstances. And so to watch this young person just laying down and like just go to this and lay there like was no, thank goodness everyone was laying down, because I was like, I was having the feels in the moment to just see that. And those are the moments where it's, that you've guided people on the right path, and that they've really allowed it to become powerful. And meditation, taking that in, and I alluded to that being a super scary word earlier. And it is a super scary word when you think about meditation as sitting still, not moving, doing nothing for 30 minutes, and you don't ever sit still and do nothing. So helping people, that's been such a big thing through the pandemic for me, is to help people build a meditation practice. That 3 breaths can be meditation. Just 3 deep breaths, doing nothing else except thinking about your breathing. And you can do that anywhere. That's a really simple tool to take out. Building a practice, knowing that if your brain is completely empty, you're not alive anymore. So we really aren't going for that. The goal in meditation is not to empty your brain. It may have been to quiet your brain, to think about as little as possible when monks were practicing it, and when Buddhists were sitting in caves and had given up all of their belongings. But we live in 2021, almost 22. We don't live in a place where we give up all of our belongings. We have families, we have jobs. And so, yes, your brain should be busy. And yes, it should be super full. And when you've never meditated before, you have a few decades of stuff built up in there to process. And so sitting, if you sit and your brain is completely empty and you've never meditated before, well, you are very, very lucky, but more than likely you're going to sit down, you're going to get silent, and your brain is going to start
thinking. Yeah.
And that's
when people open their eyes like, wait a minute, this isn't no.
And you're like, how many minutes have passed?
Right. 20 seconds. 30 seconds.
Those are all completely natural things. But if you have expectations that it should be different, you label yourself as a failure. If you are already an anxious person, you become more anxious. If you're prone to panic, you might, trigger a panic attack for yourself. And all of that becomes counterproductive. So as we've worked through the pandemic together, I've been so fortunate to have time and opportunities to work with so many people on small scale to just approach a meditation practice of, we can build to this, but no, these are a lot of misconceptions for the world that we live in today, and some expectations that are not super, super reasonable at this moment. Maybe one day,
right
now. Yeah. And so, just all of those things, those tools that we've been able to share, and with my amazing team of instructors who I would not be able to do this without, that they've been able to help me share, has just been so beautiful, really.
I love it. And I just love what you do. So if we do have viewers that are watching right now, they're like, oh my God, I love Liz. I want to try this out. What do I do? How can they contact you if they are interested in your services?
Well, I would say there are lots of ways. We try to be as accessible as possible. So first of all, our website at Serendipity Yoga and Wellness. If that's too much to remember, just type yoga in Homewood, and then you'll be like, oh, it's that long ass word. I know it. That works just as well. So serendipityogaandwellness.com is one place to start. We are still, and I think this is important when we talk about COVID and anxiety and all of this, we are still taking very seriously all COVID mitigations. So that's my number one question. Like, what are you doing in regards to all of this? So we have classes in the studio. We have classes online. When it gets nice and warm again, we'll have classes outdoors again to give everybody a chance to, find their own spot. For anything indoors and in person, we are honoring the mask mandate at this time, and everybody is masking. We're socially distanced, we're sanitizing everything. So just put that out there. So that's the first place. Website, you can come in and be in person or online. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter at Serendipity Yoga and Wellness. You can't just look up yoga in Homewood. It doesn't work that way. So you have to remember the long password at that point. So you've got that Serendipity Yoga and Wellness. You can always reach out to us via email, accessing through the website. If anybody wants to reach out to you guys and you can forward that my way, that's perfect. And the studio's phone number is 708-495-8643. I will say one of the things, if you've not done yoga before, that's really hard to get used to up front is that yoga studios, because they're a safe space where we are processing all of the things, the doors are locked 90% of the time because we don't want people just walking in and out. So a lot of people will try to stop by the studio and just drop in and like, I want to see the space, or, you know, pick up a gift certificate or anything like that. And because we're creating such a safe environment, we don't leave the doors unlocked. So calling ahead, I meet people there all the time to do tours and to help you feel acclimated and safe. But you can't just, generally speaking, you can't just walk in.
I love that though, because like you said, you are creating a safe space. So I love that. Absolutely. And she gave you all of the information. So if you are interested on this journey, on these services, please, please, please reach out. But we are going to go to Lysandra to see if we have any questions in our chat.
So we don't have any questions, but we do have a few comments from Heather Jones. She says, Liz has broadened my horizons on meditation, and for that, I will always thank her. I now incorporate it into my migraine life and routine. And then she says, it's truly amazing to watch them grow. I think she's talking about the children. Yeah.
I love it. And you see, Charlie did, you know, make a sweep through our camera. You know,
He came in for a minute.
Right. He's like, okay, you see me, bye. But that is great. I really appreciate you, Liz. I know we don't have any questions, but again, if you are viewing this, if you have any last minute questions, you know, even after we end this, of course, you can always go back and look at our videos on our Facebook page. Please feel free to leave any comments, any questions that you may have. If not for Liz, for our agency, or if you know, like she said, if you need to get in touch with us, we can definitely forward you over to her. But yes, we want to thank you so much, Liz. I really appreciate you coming on here and speaking about the wellness and yoga. I think this is really an important time to really speak about this. And the way that you broke it down was just, it made sense. And it was very interesting. So I thank you so much. Is there any last minute words or comments or announcements you would like to make?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for taking time today to allow me to speak about the things that I'm passionate about. And I will just say to anybody watching this, while I would love to have you in the studio, you don't have to pay for yoga. You don't have to spend any money on anything fancy to be able to do this. You can stop, you can take a deep breath, you can think about what you're grateful for in the moment, you can stretch in a way that feels natural and authentic to you. And all of those are very simple and very free ways to start to feel very connected to yourself and to dip your toe in the practice of yoga. So remember that as you move through the holiday season and into the new year, that I am here for you, but you can also always be there for yourself.
I love that ending. And with that being said, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you all have a great holiday. Be safe, stay safe, wash your hands and wear your mask. And thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.